Hi, everybody. Hi, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today in episode 30 of our conversations with Mercredan. And my name is Libby, and Francis is, excuse me, sorry about that. Francis is in the background getting himself ready so we can have yet another amazing and insightful conversation with Mercredan. And today we are going to talk to Mercredan about the Planetary Guardian. Now, for many years, Mercredan has talked about the Planetary Guardian, what he calls the life and the soul of this planet and the protector of this planet. So we're going to talk to him about um, any insights or anything else we can glean around this particular subject. If you enjoy what you're watching, please do like and subscribe if you haven't already to follow for updates. Without further ado, let's cross over to Francis and see what Mercredan has to say for us today. Over to you, Francis.
Hello, and once again, it is my privilege and pleasure to come and spend these few moments of your time. We have said so much over such a long time. Rather than repeating and repeating the same message, maybe then it is time to take on board what life offers as the authority and the determinant of one's earthly experience. Enough for us to begin our conversation.
Thank you, Mercredan, and thank you again for being here with us again today. And as you may have heard about our introduction, we'd like to talk to you about the Planetary Guardian. I know you've mentioned a lot over the years, and you've just suggested in the introduction that there's probably, well, instead of repeating over and over again, let's look at what we can learn and apply. I'd like to start, though, with an introduction for those that have never heard about the concept of the Planetary Guardian. Can you talk to us about perhaps who or what this is and what their role is on this planet?
As I have said so many times, the first principle, the first universal law is the law of paradox. Shall we say, approaching a reality from both sides of the options. Then shall we say, within the fields of influence, the planet appears from within its container, that is, the galactic container and the system, the solar system container that creates a unit that has a characteristic and in one sense a personality. And from the other side, humanity or consciousness, shall we say, expressing itself through humanity, creates a unit on which to express and explore its possibilities. And between the two, there is an interface, shall we say, the units of consciousness affecting the units of the solar impression, engage together to create a characteristic unified base, shall we say, a home for humanity, and a home for the solar impression. And shall we say then, the planet as such, the home base as such, has a guiding framework in which to marry, shall we say, to provide the background for which human consciousness, individual and as a mass agreement, to take place. So you understand then every system within that is mediated by both sides of the character, you like. So shall we say, whatever humanity impresses on the environment responds from its natural propensity, that is, from its own characteristic, shall we call it personality. So then, shall we say, this is the planetary guardian. It is a guardian because it is bringing balance and protection, so that the excesses must be mediated to bring, shall we say, clarity and conditions that remain constant enough. Does that give, shall we say, a broader impression of what the guardian truly is?
It does, thank you. So in terms of its role of balance...
So shall we say this? If the child is irritating, the parent becomes irritated. Then the child wants to go beyond what is allowed. The parent brings in such pressures required to contain and restrain the child. And so there is an interaction, an agreement as to what is allowed, what are the rules within the home. And so humanity attempts to control the home framework, but if it in itself is out of control, breaking all the rules, then the guardian parent must apply whatever methods it has for what is called time out. So shall we say then that the effects that one sees upon the planet results are containers to apply to bring everything into a, shall we say, a balance that is not necessarily harmonious. So then what is clear is humanity is constantly interacting with the environment, both individually, which might simply be caught out in the rain, or as a unit, one is brought the storms and destruction that it implies.
So that's what's been happening a lot recently, effectively our time out for our imbalance and how we're treating the planet.
Of course, and how one is treating one another. You understand, when one treats one another in certain fashions, then the implications begin to dominate the overall condition on the planet, and thus the frequency of the unit as a whole. The planetary guardian is also, shall we say, evolving at the same rate of degree as human consciousness. So there is an underlying change in potentials as the shift in consciousness takes root, as it were. And this is why measurable structures and changes are occurring. For example, the interrelationship between your planet and its host, that is the sun itself, the star within the galactic whole, impressing the need for evolutionary shifts, changing patterns within the environment that affect human consciousness. In other words, the sun is waking up, the planetary guardian is waking up the consciousness within the fields of influence. And as such, the human consciousness is awakening and showing more regard for its host.
Interesting. So when you spoke around the conflict or how we treat one another, is how we treat one another more of an influence on the balance of the planet than it is around how we specifically treat the environment, or is it just all in one encompassed?
Shall we say different elements provide different structural responses? Shall we say the planet is awakening consciousness as much as it is responding to its natural balance of options. In other words, shall we take an example? As humans mistreat each other, you cause changes in the planetary structure for survival. As the survival in certain locations decreases, more of the residents flow naturally towards those areas that are more supportive and often exploitive. You understand? And so you change one challenge for a different challenge. You mistreat the planet as such, and then you have a human crisis on your hands. a different response, of course, but all of it is, shall we say, a part of the interaction between all elements. Everything is interconnected, interdependent, and interrelated. So every effect then is the result of something else, which is the result of something else. And like in your own body, if something is out of balance, then you will find that you have a personal crisis of suffering. So, shall we say, one gets a sickness because one is exposed to something that one is not able to rebalance. That is why illness, that is physical illness, has always a component of psychological disturbance, which is related to environmental impacts, social integration or disintegration, and so on. So, shall we say, certain groups provide greater challenges, but the challenges are always begin to flow into the social structure as a whole. So, shall we say, what you experienced and called a pandemic was, of course, the result of many decades of misappropriation, exploitation, not only of the planet itself, but also of each other. You understand what I'm getting at? So, shall we say, if one wishes for healing, one has to stay in balance with the unit as a whole. Does this make sense?
It does, thank you. So what advice can you give us if one is feeling the imbalance, if one is feeling the suffering or the illness per se? What advice could you give to us?
I said before, take a step back and recognize that you are the author of your novel. That is your storyline within the whole. You understand, if you look to your neighbor, they are running a very different set of circumstances. Even though they live in the same neighborhood, their storyline, their responses, and so on, have a different track record as such. You understand what I'm getting at? So when you step back into authorship and authority and look at the, shall we say, the history track that brought about what one is experiencing in the present, and start to recognize that you can continue in the same vein, or one can cease the vein, shall we say, and take a different route. Do you follow what I mean? So as I have pointed out, when you write your story into the present time, from the beginning as you remember it to the present time, then you start to see the tracks that led to the present. The tracks that lead to the present will continue on unless one makes a conscious change in direction. That is not just that one starts to think differently, but one begins to act in a different style. Do you understand? Some people even take on, shall we say, physical disabilities, and yet are extreme examples of positive reflection. The choice had to be made. A choice, often a difficult choice. And then great things can be achieved. To follow what this means. Because it always seems as if one can talk philosophically, one can set out, shall we say, descriptions and so forth, but the base rules still apply. One is living in the universal paradox. What seems to be the case is also not the case. If one takes on, shall we say, a certain characteristic role, then it is obvious that one has taken that role on, and shall we say, the balancing role is sitting in the unconscious realms. One can always tap into that. So humankind, if you look carefully, will see that whatever is occurring is the result of choice. Not one single choice, but the accumulation of multitudes of choices over periods of time. This is why children often seem to be different every day. From day to day to day, there is a thread as they build up a certainty of who they are, brought about by considering the survival, the best method of survival in their environmental situation. At the same time, if you are to become, shall we say, open to the voice of the planetary guardian, it will both offer itself in regards to evolutionary process and as a protection from elements within its field of influence. Let us break that down a little. If you begin to have, shall we say, empathy, compassion, shall we say, for someone else, then you begin to sense, not, shall we say, with emotional senses, but a deeper sense of connection. One starts to truly appreciate that person, their experiences. One starts to gain insights into elements that one could not perceive from the simple external, but one has notions and tracks, if you like. You start then to appreciate the world that you live in. You start to feel as if you are part of the world. You are walking, if you like, in the world. And yet the world and yourself are not separate. You are simply expressions of the whole. There is a certain then sense of empathy with everything around you. Everything. When one starts to take on the notion of everything, nothing is excluded. Then you are in the world. You are truly experiencing your experience of the world, and it brings you to experience yourself in the world. Do you understand what I'm getting at? Because it, shall we say, is a skill that one develops by the direction of one's perception of things. If you perceive something as separate from self, then you are separated from it. And because it is indeed part of you, then you are separate from yourself. Such is a practice. As much a practice as any sort of meditation. It is a practice, and therefore it is practical.
Thank you.
You understand, then you are becoming one with the other that you are, the planetary guardian itself.
Lovely, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add today?
I think that is plenty to consider. And so, as usual, if you apply as best you might, because some people always find they are not doing it well enough and so on. And that is what stops one truly gaining insight. So the purpose is to try to perceive it as best that you can. And then you are working in consciousness, and along with everyone else who is doing as best as they might, the whole becomes an easier task. Then once again, thank you for your time. And until we meet again, goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mercredan. And thank you for everybody who's listened today. Thank you for tuning in and contemplating what is being offered. Please feel free to let us know in the comments what part you enjoyed most or what you would like to know more about. We would love it if you could like this video if you did enjoy it, and if you'd like to follow for more or be updated when we have more live events or not live updates, feel free to subscribe so that you can follow and see what's going on. In the meantime, Delane will be back in 3 days' time with another amazing conversation around the relationship between giving and receiving. So until then, I hope you have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are, and bye for now. Thank you.